Hello, everyone, and welcome to VWMOOC 25 and our third week. Yes, we've reached week 3, and it's really exciting because we are learning so much, and that includes me as well. Today's session is with Dr. Mark Childs. He is a senior learning designer at Durham Center for Academic Development, Durham University in the United Kingdom. He specializes in pedagogic design for online and blended learning, with a focus on learner collaboration in virtual environments. He holds multiple degrees, including a PhD in education from the University of Warwick, and is a senior fellow of the HEA. In 2021, he received a National Teaching Fellowship for his work with virtual reality and video conferencing. Co-host of the Godzilla podcast, he also authored a book of the same name, so look that up. In Second Life, he is known as Gan McGan, and he presents widely on immersive learning. So I'm really excited about this, Val.
This meeting meets every single Thursday at noon Second Life time, which is Pacific time in the US. Grid time, we call it. And individuals share whatever they would like about themselves and how they use virtual worlds for the metaverse. So I'll scroll back up and we'll see here that this is in collaboration with the Virtual Worlds Education Consortium. And today we're sharing this on the MOOC. I put a little bit about myself and the work I do in the metaverse as the director of the Community Virtual Library and one of the co-coordinators of the VWEC. I scroll down and I can see Beth Ghostraven, a retired teacher librarian in the physical world, and she does professional clothing here in Second Life for avatars. Scrolling down, you can see that Sheila is faculty member of the Information School, University of Sheffield in the UK. She's the leader of this weekly discussion group, the VWER, Virtual Worlds Education Roundtable. Nellie did an introduction for our speaker today, and that's Gan McGan, who's Dr. Mark Childs, a senior learning designer at Durham University, and a podcaster at pedagogzilla.com. Sheila is relogging. We'll see if her voice is fixed when she gets back. Part of the metaverse is the constant troubleshooting through many different apps, and there are upgrades being made right now to voice, so we're having some audio issues. And Dr. Mark Childs says, I don't currently use metaverse education, but I'm working in video-based VR and trying to persuade those colleagues to trial metaverse-based education. So this is a great roundtable to discuss the evolving metaverse, all the apps, platforms, both with VR headsets and certainly without them on desktop. Shiloh is saying good morning to everyone. She has a graduate background in anthropology at the University of New Mexico and an interest in museum exhibits in both the real world and in Second Life, and improving education and learning in exhibits. And she's telling about an upcoming event presented by Tom Bukowski. And then we have, let's scroll down here a little bit, lost my place in the chat. And I'll pull the chat up so everybody can see it on Zoom if they're interested in how this looks in the virtual world. Esperanza Fries, Hope Botterbush, semi-retired University Environmental Science Program developer and manager. And she is a researcher for science using AI, augmented reality, and quantum in environmental marine technology development and education. Elsa here, Anna Childs, used to spend a lot of time in Second Life and is saying it's nice to be back after a long break. These days working for UNICEF. Ellie Pinion, Dr. Becky Adams, University of New Mexico, faculty. Ed Tech, teacher prep, online teaching and learning. And she is also co-coordinator of the Virtual Worlds Education Consortium. Ellie has a passion for using technology to teach across distances. She's hooked on virtual worlds, looking at VR and AI. Happy to be here at VWER and on the VWMOOC 2025. So Sheila's still having some voice problems, but we'll just scroll down in the text and see if any others have continued to add their bios. And Sheila, interrupt me if your voice is fixed. I was just about to read Marley. Mila Miller, Marley Milena, combines arts, psychology, and education to present many programs in Second Life. She provided the spark to begin VWEC and the CVL Music Library since she was a musician. She has a group called Octagon Creative Exploration and will be doing a MOOC session on August 30th called Revelations with Symbolic Modeling. I see Dom Perignon. Warm water with honey should help. Oh, talking about Sheila's voice. Thank you for that tip. If you're having voice problems, Sheila. Would you like me to continue using voice on Zoom, or I can silence my mic and just sum things up on Zoom if you prefer? I see Andrea. Yeah, Sheila.
No, I was going to say, I think perhaps if you keep on with the introductions, and then we're going to be handing over to Gan anyway. He's going to be doing his own voice.
Perfect. Okay. And I see that we have, did I miss one? Let's see, Apuliana, who was introduced to the MOOC last year, has come back. Hypergrid jumped across the open sims. It shows the MOOC is a powerful way to demonstrate the metaverse. She's Andrea Arfini, an EFL teacher and academics programs specialist from Argentina. Let's see if there are any other introductions coming. We'll turn it over to you, Dr. Mark Childs. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, okay, so this evening, as with all of these sessions that I've done for this particular session, it's mainly a lot of it is about getting people to discuss things and chat amongst yourselves. But what I thought I'd do is break this into 3 sections, each of which is talking about a particular project or practice that I'm doing at the moment. And then hopefully it'll all lead together and we can all talk about where the overlaps are and where we feel about everything fits. So the first one is about playful learning and practice. And I'm currently working on a project to promote playful learning within 6 different universities. The project's called Replay, and there's a link in the notes, or will be. And the idea of Replay is to test the effectiveness of playful learning across the 6 different universities. They're all in the UK, and actually they're all in England. Yes, they're all in England. We didn't get any Welsh ones. And yes, so going off track a bit there. So the point of playful learning, one of the things that we're testing is that playful learning is meant to promote engagement with learning environments, and so encourage more intrinsic motivation amongst students. It also, the idea of playfulness is it normalizes failure. So failing is a normal part of learning, and so by being playful and having a playful environment, the literature says that this reduces the fear of failure. And perhaps, therefore, reducing failure itself. The more prone you are to fearing getting things wrong, the more likely you are to get things wrong. That's what the literature said. It also creates inclusive and safe learning spaces. So you feel included, you feel safe. You also feel, because you actually feel that you belong, there's a sort of sense of connection with other people. And then also the idea is that it makes people more curious, more imaginative, and also makes them more creative. But that's what we're planning to test with this particular project. The literature says all this, but we want a control group which isn't playful, the group which is playful, and we'll look at whether or not all these things improve in our playful group. So that's kind of my job. But what I'm interested in is take these principles and apply them to playful practice. So all these things are great. Engagement, fear of failure being reduced, being more creative, being more included. So we're talking about that for our learners, but what about applying those principles to the way that we work and the way that we work with each other? So I'm particularly focused on this since the last 12 months or so, because I'm exploring the experience of neurodivergent colleagues, and specifically from my own perspective, which is I was diagnosed with autism last year. So I connected this with this feeling of not really feeling comfortable in very corporate environments, getting things wrong because you're not being professional enough and all those sorts of things. And I think that's why I was drawn to Second Life in the first place. And I'm wondering, perhaps, and this is where this conversation's leading now, is this something that you all connect to? So I'd like us to all spend about 5-10 minutes maybe talking about these particular questions. Okay, to what extent is your working environment in wherever you work? I'm assuming on the whole we're educators, but it could be anything. This applies to anybody. So do you feel that you can play? Is it playful in any way? Does your institution encourage this playful practice? The other question is, do you get the chance to combine work and play in Second Life here more than you do in your regular outside Second Life jobs? And why do you think those differences are? And then finally, do you think that element of play, this is my supposition, if we could play more, if we could mess around a bit more, if we could just be ourselves a bit more, would this actually mean that we feel better at work? Would it create better psychological safety? Especially, and we can all contribute here, but do you think actually it would be more inclusive for people as well?
How do you feel about playfulness? I do want to say that I think all good teachers have always known that you bring games and fun and play into your lessons, because there's nothing worse than just having someone drone on and on with a lecture.
That's true, Val, but I think it's more so in with young learners than at universities. I mean, universities tend to be more serious.
And Nellie's mentioning on Zoom, and you all can talk about this. She said, that's true, Val, in for young learners, but universities often strive to make it very serious, and they don't really allow that time for fun and playfulness. So what do you think of that? And Sheila's saying she'll be a devil's advocate and say, I have felt anxious and oppressed sometimes when people have forced us into playful activities that she didn't find fun or playful. Yet Marley says, most of what I do here is play, experimenting, making discoveries using art, building tools, etc. And Beth points out, Sheila, forced play seems like an oxymoron. And Ellie loves this subject and has experienced that it motivates students. So Gan asks, how do you get to do that outside of Second Life? Liz asks, is it easier?
Actually, it was a question. I was pointing out to Marley that I think she gets to do quite a lot outside Second Life as well in her work with sort of more artistic and creative things. So, yeah. But also, I wanted to come back to a statement that Nebulani made, which was about how this feels more playful. What is the elements of this space that makes it more playful than the physical world? I wonder if Nebulani's got any thoughts about that, because that's really interesting as well.
She says we can't see people's body language here. We have to find other ways. That's a big difference.
That's a good point. That's a very, very good point, because I was thinking that I like to have fun and, fool around in real life. And I can't really do that in Second Life because my avatar is not that funny. Well, I don't know. I guess there must be some way of making an avatar, you know, kind of have fun and move around and jump around. So I think the avatar limits us.
Nellie is saying that she can't really use the avatar to jump around and be playful as well as she can in the real world, and that the avatar could be rather limiting. I find that I can meet people here sometimes on a deeper level because they don't have facial expressions and body language, and they have to use their words to get their point across, and they open up much more. I've worked with some teachers for many, many years and not known them on as deep a level as I have some of the avatars sitting at this table. So there's two sides to that coin. Sheila says, I'm being a bit negative, but when designing learning, I do try to incorporate different kinds of pedagogy, but I'm also aware of regarding cultural issues. Also, I teach a lot of international students. Some of them might have different conceptions of play or be disconcerted by being too playful. And Gan says sometimes it can be just rule breaking, that playfulness. Anybody else, voice or text? Andrea said, although I'm retired now, I can say that playing games in my classes is a wonderful way to keep everyone motivated.
I like to see my students laugh. I mean,
Right.
and I'll do anything to get
That's
them
a really
to laugh.
interesting question. I think the difficulties with it are, I think, something the team itself is. I don't want to be ungracious about myself. Maybe underestimate my own capacity or those of my team. But I think one of the dangers of a project like Replay, which I think we need to explore more, is that the people who are drawn to implementing it are a kind of self-selected sample. We all prefer play. We've all got a gaming background, or we're a playful background, or we find the corporate thing a bit too uncomfortable. And so basically we are talking to the choir when we're talking to each other. We don't get those dissenting voices. And also when we're asking for volunteers, we get the people who are more predisposed to changing their practice because they're also drawn to this as a pedagogy. And so therefore, by its nature, it doesn't have a representative sample of pedagogues on the research team or on the implementation team. So I think we might struggle to find those people challenging us within the project. So everybody who said something about it's a bit of a challenge to teach in a playful way because of those cultural or those problematic issues, I think I'm going to have to come back to you all and say, what is it we might be doing wrong here? Do you think actually this might just wind people up? So that's the really interesting thing to come out of that, and I think really useful for me. So let me go back to my my second of my different sections, and that is what I've called, well, not what I've called, I've taken this idea from somebody else, but it's secret agents of change is the second thing. So this is a way in which I'm trying to make and looking at ways to make practice more playful, work more fun, getting that sense of belonging that I connect with other people through at work, to just make it feel like a better place to be during the day. And this is in bringing ways to bring our external selves to work. Now, I'm aware of some of the challenges to this, perhaps a bit more, because more people, I think, have challenged me on this. And they've said that I can't be myself at work. I have to mask. I can't come into a classroom and be playful or be my authentic self because my students will. I already have my students challenging my authority. And so therefore, I don't want to be my full self. And absolutely, I get that. So you cannot bring your true selves due to fear of safety, due to fear of prejudice. And I've made the point here that in the UK, Many people are now legally required to mask their authentic selves. So we can't, because otherwise they'll be excluded from public spaces. So I'm not suggesting that we bring our full selves to work, not at all. But what I am saying is that the colleagues with whom I collaborate more effectively, that I get on with, that I share ideas more openly with, are those that I've done, where I know something about their background, this hinterland. And the two I'm thinking of specifically are people who have done crafting workshops, because they come from an arts and crafts background as well as their business background. Or they do writing workshops because they write poetry. And so I've got along and it's, let's do a creativity workshop. And they will say, let's write a poem. And then they will talk about the poetry that they write. And usually it's poems about horses, because they also like horses. But all of these different things are a way for their real selves to come through. And I know something meaningful about them as people. And so the inspiration from this was from what was Remixed Conference 2 years ago. And Sheila will pop a link into that. And then a podcast that I was asked to go to create a podcast disseminating the conference. And that's why I was involved in this. And so the head of the Disruptive Media Learning Lab, which I'm sorry, Sheila, I did not put this in my transcript and I forgot, but Sylvester Arnab. Let me put this in. Sylvester Arnab, because I should cite his name, because he's the person that came up with this idea. And he talked about us being secret agents. What's your secret identity? And he talked about Malaysian cooking. He's Malaysian and he brings in Malaysian food, and this is a sort of space for him to share who he is with his colleagues. And I found the same with podcasting. It was something I did for fun, and I now do it as part of my job. Another thing this link in here. Yes, okay, it'll be in the next bit. So this is my next topic for discussion, is what do you think about this as an idea? What are the advantages and disadvantages of bringing this outside self into your teaching, if you're an educator, or your practice, if you're not? Do you do this already? And if so, how? And also, are there ways that you could bring in this external self, just an element of your secret identity that you could bring into your job or your work or your teaching or whatever? And then my final question for this section is there anything about what you're learning about Second Life that you can bring into your physical world practice as well? Is there anything that you've picked up about identity or play or just being here that you bring back into your regular life? Not regular life, because this is regular life. Let me rephrase that. Into your life outside of Second Life.
That's a great question. What do others think? You can add your comments in the chat box here in Zoom, or if you're in Second Life, hopefully you're adding it there and we can read what's written there.
Yes, people in Zoom are encouraged to also speak in the chat, and I'll let you know what they're saying. I think there is a line of transparency. Some people are different in different worlds. And for me, I'm the same, and exactly the same. I'm absolutely transparent. Sheila said she'd agree. She has developed through being in Second Life. That means she says, I change, and I change in all worlds. Because of course we all grow and change and learn new perspectives, but it's a very interesting topic, because digital identity is really the most important element of digital citizenship, and the next generation of kids are forming that. And what does that mean? What is it? I like, Mark, how you're saying you found you could feel like you're more of an extrovert here in Second Life safely, because your avatar here could dance on a table. And though you're not dancing on tables in the real world, the physical world, you're definitely more confident in my outside Second life. Oh, because of that confidence developed in the virtual world?
What if you're an extrovert to start out with? Do you become super? Like
Nellie's
a
saying, what if
Superman?
you're already an extrovert? How would you become like a Superman? Even more? Interesting question, Nellie. And for those in Zoom, what Marley is saying, as a Gestalt and process-oriented therapy and humanist educator person, I think it's much more healing and satisfying to bring as much of my true self as possible into any situation. And I think all people do put part of their true self, even if they're role playing, you're still you.
But I get
So-
what Mark is saying when it comes to teachers, you know, even with young learners, sometimes you have to sound tough, even though you're not really tough, just to make sure that you're managing the class. So some teachers don't show their real self in case they lose control. I think that's the fear at university as well, especially with today's students at university. You know, they're not the same as they were in the past. They're a lot noisier and less controllable or self-disciplined.
Nellie's raising an interesting point too about educators. Often in the classroom, they don't let out a lot of their true self for classroom management, control of the environment, the discipline of the students. And so they put on maybe a more stern persona than they're actually feeling. And Bell brings up the point of the problem that people don't seem to understand my way of looking at it. I can't just be a manager if I don't feel ready and secure in what I'm doing. So how we're feeling on the inside may not be what we're actually presenting on the outside through lack of self-confidence or whatever. And Kriyat is asking if this all depends on the overall culture of the institution. And Gan says, yes, absolutely. And also what you're teaching, as Gan points out, some things in the arts, some things in a different discipline. There's different, it's almost like we have registers of language, even in playfulness in the classroom and purpose.
Maybe it also depends on the culture, you know, and the teacher's role or whatever role it is. Sometimes you just have to, you know, behave the way you're expected to. And if you're expected to be serious, you know, and professional, sometimes, you know, professional equals being serious. You
Nellie's
can't
pointing
be
out
playful.
that being professional often means being serious. So it's kind of what the expectations are for the particular environment you're in. Beth points out there's a difference between being me in both worlds and being transparent about my RL physical world identity. And people are concerned about that. Privacy is another huge part of digital citizenship. And so it's like we are who we are, even if we don't want everyone in the world to know.
Can't he talk? I mean, it would be so nice if Gan could use his voice.
Dan, if you want to say that out loud, we hear you fine on Zoom. If you want to just share what you're typing in the chat.
Okay, yeah. So I think the thing I really responded to was something that Belle Venus said higher up, which is about management and about becoming a supervisor and about not knowing much and about being understood and actually trying to fake this is now me interpreting it, but also trying to fake being something you're not in order to be understood. And I think that's something that a physical world demands more of us than Second Life. And another reason why I think this space can feel like a more comfortable environment. But also, this is the kind of heart of what Belle's saying is the heart of what I'm trying to start finding ways to explore, is taking that playful learning, all the playful pedagogy stuff, and applying that to playful practice to make those to make those difficulties that Belle's articulating a little bit easier, or finding ways through them, or actually, if we can do this in a playful space within the physical world, and therefore talk about these in a sort of protected, what they call the magic circle, but it's, a kind of ludic space where we're playing, and then take what we've learned into the rest of our lives, then maybe that's a way through, but I'm not sure. I'm really at the beginnings of looking at this as a area to explore more. But this is part of the reason, well, half of what I'm doing here is really to start gathering a group of people who are also interested in it, so we can start sharing ideas and challenging each other. And what Beth said about learning early on as a teacher was how to fake it, which comes to the third section. But I was told to never, don't. The first piece of advice I had on my teacher training was, don't smile until Christmas. And the concept behind that, I don't know if that's familiar to everybody in the UK. I'm guessing maybe outside
It's
the UK.
familiar all over the world. Tell them that.
And authoritative and not playful, because if the children, as I'm talking to kids, teaching kids, if the kids are slightly scared of you, they won't mess about. And it's classroom control by being authoritarian and disciplinarian was the first lesson I learned as a teacher, was how to do that. Yeah. And it's not a great environment for anyone to be in, really.
No, and Nellie's totally agreeing that teachers all over the world encounter that. Don't smile till Christmas. To classroom management is a difficult for a lot of teachers, and so we're really bringing up the balance between stern classroom management and joy, playful, and laughter. There's a and the more experience you have, and that whole fake it till you make it does make me think. A lot of times we're our own worst critic, and we think, well, someone else is doing a better job at this. They're going to see that I don't fully have the best control of my class or whatever. All young teachers, it takes 3 years to really get any confidence, where you really feel like you've got it down. You understand the curriculum, the classroom management, and it changes every year. So we're hard on ourselves sometimes. And I think that's where the fake it till you make it came in. Just keep on going, and you'll gain more confidence.
And also, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got and making me feel confident was, we all see our own blooper reel, but we see everybody else's show reel. And it's sort of because everybody is presenting this face where they're getting everything right and they're deleting or hiding the bits where they get wrong. But we know ourselves everything we get wrong because we see it. And, the people closest to us possibly see, even they possibly don't see everything. And so, I think that's part of the problem as well, and where imposter syndrome thing comes from, and also that sort of stuff. Okay, that's great. That's way more than I was expecting and hoping for. So thanks for that conversation. I now want to move into the third bit of my thing, which is the third research project that I'm working on, and this is about discussing identities, and this cropped up briefly in the conversation we've just had, which is about how you form an identity as a teacher, and it is specifically mentoring early career teachers. So the concept behind this project is to provide a resource for the teachers and their mentors to basically start a mentoring discussion. So it's a springboard to talk about how they visualize themselves, their role in the classroom, and also where they see their career progressing. So it's, how do you typify your identity, your role now? How was it when you started? Where are you going to get to? And the imagery, the archetypes we're talking about are Jungian archetypes, but also I was brought into this project because of my background in the tarot, and analysing tarot and looking at the imagery of it and relating the imagery of the tarot to imagery of other genres or other pop cultural things usually. So I do a blog about this. People read the blog and said, could you be a tarot expert? And I've put in my notes to Sheila, I put the word expert in quotation marks because, I'm faking it largely. So, and I think as an aside, this is also a good example of what I was saying about the secret agent discussion is I just happened to mention this. Oh, I read tarot cards. And so I ended up being part of the core research team at Birmingham University. And so it's just funny how things work out. So I think another thing that has also worked with this is talking about identity through your favorite playlist. So a playlist that typifies the way that you see your role or your approach to pedagogy and things. And so again, I interviewed a few people about pick a song that represents how you see teaching. And there's a link there in the notes as well to that radio show. So when I was studying identity, back when I was doing my PhD about Second Life, people seemed to fall into two broad categories. They called themselves the Augmentationists, and this was people who use Second Life to augment their physical world interactions. So they said who they were in the physical world, and their identity and their connections between people was simply there to a way to augment that. But then there were also Immersionists, who never revealed their physical world identity, and they kept those two identities very much separate. Now, for me, I think I'm a combination of the two. Everybody knows who I am in the physical world, but they also know that who I am here and who I am out there are quite different identities. So they can see both sides of that identity, and I don't pretend that I will be different here, and nobody's expecting me. They don't expecting Gan-like behavior in the physical world, or vice versa. And so this is my final discussion, and this is the thing that I would like to do a little bit dressing up, if you feel ready to, is one, and I think we talked about this already, do you have different identities in Second Life and in the physical world? And also, if you're a teacher, how would you typify your identity as a teacher? Now, you can use the Jungian archetypes like trickster, magician, mother, father, whatever, but how can you actually think of a word or an identity that captures how you perceive yourself as a teacher or as some other sort of practitioner? And if you can, or if you can't, is there an avatar or is there a skin within your wardrobe, within your inventory rather, that can actually demonstrate how you feel about yourself to everybody else? Now, if you've collected loads of these like I have, this might be easier. If it's tricky, then I understand it might be quite difficult. But if you want to, just put on a different skin to say, this is what my identity feels like in the physical world. And also, if we can come up with some good ideas, this will actually help inform my identity projects, because I'm still not convinced that actually having these archetypes, having these different identity names, will actually help people explore their conception of identity and whether or not that will help them in their roles as a teacher. But maybe it will. So yeah, actually as another question, maybe reflect on this about, is this a useful thing in order to help you teach, to think about your identity? I'll just add that. Yes, Marley, I so thought of that when I was looking at this. I mean, we're not going down the symbolic modeling route, but it is part of that. What does this picture mean to you? And then exploring that picture is what these cards are meant to do in the project that we're doing. So I might actually, once it gets underway, is make some connections with the symbolic modeling stuff. Just as a process, really. You know, they are wedded to specific images, but then the way they get unpacked, like a Rorschach test, really, is up to them.
For me, it's pretty obvious why I have the books on my head, and that's intentional. Although I don't really have flyaway hair and wish it did have the side braid that I usually wear. But I think, yeah, it's like some people, I wouldn't change my avatar. It is me. But I find now I'm going to zoom in on Gan, because look at this. Oh, yeah. What planet are you from?
That's it, exactly. That's what I feel. It's like whenever I walk into a classroom, I just feel like I'm from a different planet. I thought it was a shorter avatar than that when I looked at it, but maybe it's not.
Great avatar
properly.
coming around.
But very little tiny avatar.
So possibly maybe, get a costume and go to class as your avatar.
And I think that says so that just demonstrates so much about what I'm talking about. And I think something that is a pile of books. And in fact, one of the images that we give people is a pile of books, because that's meant to represent, you know, wisdom and learning and all those sorts of things. And I think that's a useful thing to do. Oh, it is shorter. But yeah, I think this is what it...
For me,
yes, also the interesting... Oh, sorry, go on.
no, I was just going to say, for me, that it seems like that's what it represents, but it really is a tip of the hat to the fact that content is no longer in print, and I'm no longer in the physical world working. I'm here working in digital, virtual, and that's where it's at now. Most content's more in digital, but we don't want to throw away our history. So, you know,
Yeah.
so we can all have things that represent what's going on and share that through our avatar. And sometimes it's really subconscious. Like, I think we all relate to the concept of, hey, what planet is this? What planet am I from? And your avatar, you know, it's thought provoking.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I needed to mention a little bit my original the avatar that I normally wear, which is the blue-skinned guy with the spikes. And I realized, because it's now coming up to my 20th anniversary in Second Life, and so when I joined, it was quite a lot more common to have non-human avatars. They were a lot more. They were really prevalent, and so I adopted this as a look very early on, and the punk steampunk thing and all that sort of stuff. And because I think now people identify Gan so much with that look, even though Second Life itself has moved on a bit to be a bit more human looking, I still use that avatar because I think it's so much identified with who that Gan is, and Gan being a member here. And I might change him, but after 20 years, I'm not going to change it. Of representing or talking, having an external manifestation of that identity, and then talking about that. Do you think this would be a useful process? Do you think this is something that does help? I mean, I'm just saying, oh, I feel like I'm an alien. I could just say, I feel like I'm an alien. You don't have to, I don't have to dress up as an alien to demonstrate that. It does. That's good to know. You could have blue hair in physical world, Sheila. You know, I'll send you a bottle of hair dye if you like. Ah, okay. Yes, I sometimes do have a cat on my head.
I'm zooming in on the
While I'm
kitten on her
working.
head. It's adorable. Things that you can do in the virtual world.
Well, yes. Well, I kind of do find it quite difficult to work with a cat on my head, but like I said, I do have to sometimes do that. Let me pick another one. So this is my first choice, but this is not, this is sort of,
Scary.
yeah, I want to be scary and mythical and dynamic and be looked up to, and that's never going to happen. But
It's
this is just
intimidating.
an idealized version. Intimidating. But yeah.
Well, it could be Shrek-like also.
Once you get to know him.
Oh, I don't have a Shrek. Why do I not have a Shrek skin? That would be perfect. Oh, that would be so good. I saw a Hulk one. Maybe that I could do the Hulk instead. But maybe, yeah, so maybe next time I come to one of these, I'll come as the Hulk.
The Hulk and the Shrek.
Yeah. But let me go back to my regular look, because this is now starting to freak me out.
Oh, yes, and Dex being a Digimon, very good example of a unique identity, although he's not intimidating, even though of his size.
Right, and also I haven't found a way to stop my spikes from shining, so I'm going to have to turn the bling off. There we go.
I was just going to elaborate an anecdote. from when I was at my previous university and was in the pub with some students. And the student I was talking did a critique of the clothes worn by everyone in the department. And it was quite an eye-opener for me. They were saying that so-and-so always took care and they liked the little brooches she wore and kind of the jackets. And that another colleague who was obviously trying to be like one of them, to dress to be like a student because he wore casual clothes, jumper. And they ran through, and it was quite a pivotal moment for me, because I hadn't realized how the students were assuming that I was dressing in order to impress them or for them. Whereas in fact, at that point, I was dressing to please me, which is what I mostly do. But at that point, I became much more conscious of needing to compromise, because those people were judging me and making assumptions about why I was dressing and relating it to themselves rather than me.
And the old adage of the clothes make the man. You know, our society now is so casual, where it used to be standards, you know, you dressed for the movies, you dressed to go on an airplane. And today I literally had college students come in pajama bottoms and hair all every which way. You know, the pendulum swings.
An interesting thing about Sheila was saying about the way that people dress in the physical world to teach was when I was at the OU, I worked with a lot of law lecturers who were creating a metaverse. They were doing basically what would been done in Second Life a lot, but it was to create a virtual courtroom and to give the students some practice in doing that. And they said one of the things they found difficult about being a lecturer was they didn't have the uniform. So when they were lawyers, because they'd been practicing lawyers, they had a uniform that every lawyer wore that was like an armor that they could put on and be somebody else. And because they were now lecturers and everybody dressed casually, except in the business school, but everybody else dressed casually, and they therefore couldn't put their armor on and couldn't hide behind something, which is really interesting. And I just seen librarians comment about college students coming to class in pajama bottoms. Oh my God. So so I think that's very interesting as well, because there'd be nothing that would make me feel more uncomfortable than wearing a suit. But actually, for some people, it's how they hid and they needed to hide in order to feel comfortable. So I think there is something about clothing that I've not explored, but I think maybe going into that as well, or looking at different ways that people express identity, but also how they conceptualize it. And maybe there's something in that, but maybe there's also, but I think, I think that could be quite different than actually finding an image that represents who you are or how you perceive yourself or how you relate to others within those different environments, as opposed to physically, actually, literally what you look like. But I think those are two very allied kinds of conversations that are both interesting to explore. Okay, any final observations or questions or links to what's been said in your own practice that we could talk about?
I think you've really pointed out the identity is both internal and external. What we put on the outside, how we use our words on the inside. It's all about representing yourself both in the physical world and in the metaverse. Fascinating topic.
Well, what I will do is share with the group when we're still in the very early days with the teacher identity project. I don't think it's even got an official name yet. So I've got my final meeting to discuss the images tomorrow, and then we will go off and produce the cards. And then hopefully I'll be able to share those cards with everybody and start talking about the different archetypes with people. So yeah, stay tuned, and what I might do is, if I can do this next year, maybe bring large images of the cards along us, put them on prims or on billboards, and we can all walk around and look at them and see where the project's developed over the following year. Okay, thanks for inviting me. That was a really interesting chat. Lots of things for me to think about. I'm hoping it's all, oh, of course it's all on Zoom, so I can look at the recording and see everybody's avatars a bit more clearly, and also and also look at the chat script, because I think there's a lot of really interesting chat I can explore more. So thanks everybody for.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Also thank Gan on behalf of the Virtual Worlds Education Roundtable, the Virtual Worlds Education Consortium, and the Virtual Worlds MOOC. So we all applaud you for your contribution today. It's got a really good discussion going, and certainly be great if you could come back again next year and tell us what's happened in the meantime.
Absolutely. Yeah, and some VWER meetings between now and then as well.
Yes.
I also want to mention that this topic of GANs is part of a series of topics that was suggested by artificial intelligence in response to a question about what would enhance the evolution of humanity, basically. And we've done most of them. I'm going to be doing one in a couple of weeks, another one, and Sheila and I have done some together, and some other people. So if you look back at the transcripts, you'll see a lot of those sessions and what they were about.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Val, for taking us on the tour and screen sharing for us. And we'll see you at the next session tomorrow. So
thank you very much, Nellie. Bye.